Chosen one, stop scrolling. The person who hurt you believes they got away with it. They think enough time has passed. They think their silence erased the damage. They think nobody saw what they did behind closed doors. But according to the message Archangel Michael is bringing today, there is something they do not know. A verdict has already been released in the spiritual realm, and the signs of that verdict may already be appearing around them. Before this message ends, you will understand why your pain was never ignored, why your silence was not weakness, and why heaven has been recording every detail of what happened. Stay with me until the end, because the final revelation may completely change the way you see your situation. This message is not for everyone. It is for the chosen one who has been asking, did God really see what they did to me? The answer is yes. And what Michael reveals next may be exactly what your spirit needs to hear today. Chosen one, Archangel Michael says there are moments in life when the greatest battle is not happening around you. It is happening inside you. The battle to keep believing. The battle to keep trusting. The battle to keep your heart from becoming hard after disappointment. And perhaps that is exactly where you find yourself today. You remember what happened. You remember the words. You remember the betrayal. You remember the moment everything changed. What hurts the most is not always the wound itself. Sometimes what hurts the most is watching the person who caused the wound continue living as if nothing happened. You expected accountability. You expected honesty. You expected at least a small acknowledgement of the damage that was done. Instead, you were met with silence. And silence can be one of the most painful experiences a person can endure. Because silence creates questions. Silence creates confusion. Silence leaves the mind searching endlessly for answers. Michael says many chosen ones are currently carrying a burden, and that was never meant to stay on their shoulders. They are carrying the burden of trying to understand people who have no intention of explaining themselves. They are carrying the burden of waiting for an apology that may never come. They are carrying the burden of expecting justice to arrive through human hands. But heaven is asking you a powerful question today. What if your healing was never supposed to depend on their apology? What if your freedom was never supposed to depend on their admission of guilt? What if God intended to restore you long before they ever changed? Think about that. Because many chosen ones unknowingly place their future in the hands of the people who hurt them. They say, I will move on when they apologize. I will heal when they admit what they did. I will have peace when they finally understand. But Michael says your peace was never assigned to their behavior. Your peace was assigned to God's presence. And that changes everything. Because if your peace depends on another person, then that person controls your life. But if your peace depends on God, then nobody can take it away. The enemy understands this. That is why he keeps trying to pull your attention back toward the wound. He wants you reliving old conversations. He wants you replaying painful memories. He wants you trapped in cycles of frustration. Because a distracted chosen one is easier to delay. But Michael says something important is happening right now. The very thing that tried to break you is becoming the thing that strengthens you. The very experience that tried to destroy your confidence is becoming the foundation of your wisdom. The very betrayal that tried to convince you that you were worthless is about to reveal how valuable you truly are. Because there is something many people never understand. People often attack what they secretly recognize. They criticize what they cannot become. They resist what threatens their comfort. And sometimes the hostility you experienced had less to do with your weakness and more to do with the light you carry. The enemy knew your future before you did. He recognized your potential before you recognized it. And because he could not stop God's plan, he tried to distract you from it. That is why some battles seem unusually intense. That is why some betrayals feel unusually painful. That is why some seasons appear unusually difficult. Not because you are abandoned, but because your assignment is significant. Michael says heaven has not forgotten a single detail. Every tear, every sleepless night, every moment you questioned your worth, every prayer whispered through pain, every act of restraint when revenge seemed easier. Heaven saw it all, and heaven recorded it all. There are things happening behind the scenes that you cannot yet see. Doors are moving, situations are shifting, people are being repositioned. And while you thought nothing was happening, God was working in silence. The same silent sea that confused you was often the environment where divine preparation was taking place. Chosen one, hear this clearly. The delay is not denial. The silence is not abandonment. And the lack of immediate justice does not mean justice will never come. Michael says the story is not finished. The chapter that hurt you is not the final chapter. The people who underestimated you are not holding the pen. God is still writing, and what happens next may be greater than anything you have imagined. Chosen one, Archangel Michael says the greatest danger was never the betrayal itself. The greatest danger was what the betrayal tried to convince you to believe about yourself afterward. Because every wound carries a message. Every disappointment carries a whisper. Every act of rejection attempts to plant a seed. And the enemy's goal is not simply to hurt you. His goal is to change the way you see yourself. Think about what happened after the pain arrived. The event ended. The conversation ended. The relationship ended. The betrayal happened and passed. But the questions remained. And those questions became the battlefield. Suddenly you started wondering, what did I do wrong? Why wasn't I enough? Why was I treated this way? Why do people keep leaving? Why does this keep happening to me? Michael says many chosen ones never realize that these questions become doors. And if the wrong voice answers them, those doors can lead into years of unnecessary suffering. Because when pain is fresh, the enemy immediately begins his work. He starts building a false story, a false identity, a false conclusion. He wants you to believe the wound happened because you are unworthy. He wants you to believe the rejection happened because you lack value. He wants you to believe the betrayal happened because something is wrong with you. But heaven rejects that lie completely. The truth is often very different. Sometimes people walk away because they cannot appreciate what they were given. Sometimes people reject what they do not understand. Sometimes people mistreat what they were never mature enough to handle. And sometimes your greatest mistake was simply expecting loyalty from someone who had never learned loyalty themselves. Michael says you must stop measuring your value by the actions of wounded people. Because wounded people often wound others. Confused people create confusion. Broken people spread brokenness. And spiritually blind people cannot recognize the treasure stand. ING in front of them. Their inability to see your worth never changed your worth. Their inability to honor you never reduced your value. Their inability to appreciate you never canceled your purpose. You must understand this. Because many chosen ones are still carrying labels that heaven never gave them. Labels created by painful experiences. Labels created by rejection. Labels created by criticism. Labels created by disappointment. But Michael says those labels are not your identity. You are not the betrayal. You are not the rejection. You are not the failure. You are not the mistake someone made. You are not the opinion someone formed about you. You are who God says you are. And that truth remains unchanged no matter what others choose to do. The enemy knows that if you ever fully understand your identity, he loses one of his greatest weapons. That is why he constantly tries to keep your focus on the wound instead of the lesson, on the betrayal instead of the growth, on the loss instead of the future. Because as long as you remain focused on what happened, you cannot fully step into what is coming. Michael says there is something important happening right now. You are beginning to see the situation differently. At first, all you could see was the pain. Then you started noticing the lessons. Now you are beginning to recognize the protection. Yes, protection. Because not every ending was punishment. Some endings were rescue missions. Some departures were divine redirections. Some losses were actually acts of protection disguised as disappointment. If certain people had remained in your life, they would have delayed your purpose. If certain doors had remained open, they would have led you away from your assignment. If certain relationships had continued, they would have consumed years of your destiny. But God could see what you could not see. He could see the future. He could see the hidden motives. He could see the consequences. And because he loves you, he intervened. Not always in the way you wanted, but often in the way you needed. Michael says many chosen ones are finally reaching the moment where they understand this truth. What felt like abandonment was often divine protection. What felt like loss was often divine direction. What felt like punishment was often preparation. And preparation rarely feels comfortable while it is happening. Think about a seed buried in the ground. From the seed's perspective, everything looks dark. Everything feels hidden. Everything appears uncertain. Yet beneath the surface, growth is taking place. Roots are forming. Strength is developing. Life is emerging. The same is true for you. You may not see everything God is doing, but that does not mean nothing is happening. In fact, some of the most important work occurs in seasons when nothing appears to be changing. Michael says your current season is not about proving yourself to people who misunderstood you. It is about becoming the person God created you to be. And those are two completely different missions. One leads to exhaustion. The other leads to freedom. One keeps you trapped in the past. The other moves you toward your future. Today, heaven is inviting you to release the need to convince everyone. Release the need to explain everything. Release the need to defend yourself before every critic. Because your destiny does not require universal approval. Your assignment does not require everyone to understand you. Your calling does not depend on human validation. God's plan for your life remains intact. Michael says there are things being arranged right now that will make sense later. Connections, opportunities, divine appointments, unexpected breakthroughs. You cannot see them yet, but they are moving into position. And the same God who carried you through the painful season is carrying you toward the victorious one. So do not allow the enemy to keep you trapped in yesterday's pain. A new chapter is approaching. A stronger version of you is emerging. And what comes next will reveal why this battle was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to prepare you. Chosen one, Archangel Michael says there is a pattern that appears throughout history. A pattern that many people never recognize until much later. It is the pattern of being overlooked before being elevated, being ignored before being recognized, being hidden before being revealed. And if you have experienced rejection, misunderstanding, or seasons where it felt like nobody saw your value, Michael says you may be walking through this very pattern right now. Many chosen ones assume that favor means instant acceptance. They assume that being called by God means everyone will celebrate them. They assume that purpose automatically attracts support. But the truth is often very different. Sometimes the people closest to your destiny are the last people to recognize it. Sometimes the people around you only see your present condition while heaven sees your future position. And that is exactly what happened with David. Before he became a king, he was a shepherd. Before he stood before nations, he stood alone in fields. Before he was celebrated, he was overlooked. When the prophet arrived to identify the future king, David was not even invited to stand with the others. The attention was focused on someone else. The expectations were placed on someone else. The recognition was given to someone else. David remained in the background, forgotten by people, but never forgotten by God. Michael says many chosen ones are living in a similar season. You have watched others receive opportunities. You have watched others receive recognition. You have watched others receive attention while your efforts seemed invisible. And if you're honest, there were moments when you wondered if heaven had forgotten about you. But Michael wants you to understand something powerful. Being hidden is not the same as being abandoned. Being delayed is not the same as being denied. And being overlooked by people does not mean you are overlooked by God. In fact, some of heaven's greatest preparations happen in private, because private seasons create public strength. The strength people admire is usually developed in places nobody sees. Think about your own journey. The challenges you survived, the lessons you learned, the nights you cried, the moments you nearly gave up, the battles you fought in silence. Those experiences were not meaningless. They were training. While others were receiving attention, you were receiving preparation. While others were seeking applause, you were building character. While others were focused on appearances, God was focused on transformation. And transformation always matters more than appearance. Michael says one reason the enemy attacked you so intensely is because he recognized potential that you had not yet fully recognized yourself. The enemy often reveals the value of your assignment by the intensity of the opposition. Think about it. A thief does not break into an empty house. A thief targets what is valuable. Likewise, spiritual attacks often focus on people carrying significant purpose. That does not mean every difficulty is spiritual warfare. But it does mean that your struggles do not automatically indicate weakness. Sometimes they indicate significance. Sometimes they indicate growth. Sometimes they indicate that your future carries more impact than you realize. The problem is that many chosen ones interpret the battle incorrectly. They assume opposition means they should quit. They assume difficulty means they are on the wrong path. They assume rejection means they are unqualified. But Michael says that is exactly what the enemy wants you to believe. Because if he can convince you to abandon your assignment, he never has to fight your future. The truth is that many people who rejected David later witnessed his rise. Many people who ignored him later depended on him. Many people who underestimated him later respected him. Not because David spent years trying to prove them wrong, but because he spent years preparing for what God had planned. And there is a lesson in that. Your energy is too valuable to waste trying to convince people who have already made up their minds. Your focus is too important to spend constantly seeking validation. Your purpose is too significant to be delayed by the opinions of people who cannot see what God placed inside you. Michael says there comes a moment when every chosen one must make a decision. Will you spend your future chasing approval? Or will you spend your future pursuing purpose? Because you cannot fully do both. One keeps your eyes on people. The other keeps your eyes on God. One keeps you trapped in comparison. The other moves you toward destiny. Today, Michael is calling you higher. Higher than the opinions. Higher than the criticism. Higher than the rejection. Higher than the disappointment. Because your story is not ending where the pain happened. Your story is moving toward something greater. And the very experiences that once made you question yourself are becoming the experiences that will strengthen your testimony. One day, you will look back and realize that the season you thought was destroying you was actually developing you. The season you thought was burying you was planting you. The season you thought was delaying you was preparing you. And when your appointed moment arrives, no person can stop what God has decided to release. No critic can block it. No betrayal can cancel it. No rejection can destroy it. Because what heaven has ordained cannot be undone by human hands. Michael says your preparation season is producing something powerful. But before you can fully step into the next chapter, there is one final chain that must be broken. A hidden belief, a false identity, a story you've been carrying about yourself that was never true. And that is exactly what we are going to confront next. Chosen one, Archangel Michael says there is something more dangerous than betrayal itself. Something more damaging than rejection. Something more destructive than disappointment. It is the false identity that can be created after those experiences. Because the enemy understands something that many people overlook. If he cannot stop your purpose, he will try to distort your perception of yourself. If he cannot destroy your future, he will try to convince you that you are unworthy of it. If he cannot defeat your calling, he will try to make you doubt it. And this strategy has trapped countless chosen ones. Not because they lacked strength, not because they lacked faith, but because they unknowingly agreed with lies that were never meant to become part of their identity. Michael says every painful experience asks a question. When someone rejects you, the question appears. When someone abandons you, the question appears. When someone betrays your trust, the question appears. The question is simple. What does this mean about me? And how you answer that question determines more than you realize. Many people answer it incorrectly. They conclude, I wasn't enough. I wasn't valuable. I wasn't worthy. I wasn't important. I wasn't chosen. But heaven never said any of those things. Those conclusions were created by pain. And pain is a terrible narrator. Pain only tells part of the story. Pain focuses on the wound while ignoring the purpose. Pain focuses on the loss while ignoring the lesson. Pain focuses on what ended while ignoring what is beginning. That is why Michael is calling you to examine the story you have been telling yourself. Not the story others told about you. Not the story created by circumstances. The story you quietly repeat inside your own mind. Because your life often follows the direction of your strongest beliefs. If you believe you are unwanted, you begin expecting rejection. If you believe you are unworthy, you begin accepting less than God's best. If you believe you are destined to be hurt, you begin living behind walls that keep both pain and blessings away. Michael says many chosen ones have become experts at protecting themselves. You learn how to stay guarded. You learn how to stay distant. You learn how to avoid vulnerability. You learn how to hide your heart. And for a season, those defenses may have felt necessary. But there is a problem. The same walls that keep pain out can also keep purpose out. The same barriers that block disappointment can block opportunity. The same armor that protects your heart can prevent healing from reaching it. Michael is not asking you to become careless. He is not asking you to trust everyone. He is not asking you to ignore wisdom. He is asking you to stop living as if every battle is still happening, because some battles are over. Yet many chosen ones continue carrying armor from wars that ended years ago. They continue preparing for attacks that are no longer coming. They continue expecting betrayal in situations where God is trying to bring restoration. And without realizing it, they become prisoners of experiences that should have become lessons. Michael says this is your moment of release. The moment when you stop allowing old wounds to dictate new decisions. The moment when you stop allowing past disappointments to define future possibilities. The moment when you stop measuring your worth through the actions of people who never understood your value. You were not created to spend your life proving yourself. You were created to fulfill your assignment. You were not created to carry shame that does not belong to you. You were created to carry purpose. You were not created to remain trapped in memories of what happened. You were created to move toward what God is preparing. And that future requires a new perspective. Michael says there is something powerful that happens when a chosen one finally releases a false identity. Suddenly, the chains begin to break. The confusion begins to lift. The heaviness begins to leave. The constant need for validation begins to disappear. Why? Because you stop looking to people for answers that only God can provide. You stop seeking approval from those who were never assigned to define your worth. You stop giving authority to voices that heaven never authorized. And when that happens, freedom begins. Real freedom. Not because the past changed. Not because the betrayal disappeared. Not because the people suddenly apologized. But because the lie lost its power. The lie that said you were not enough. The lie that said you were forgotten. The lie that said your future was ruined. The lie that said your best days were behind you. Michael says none of those things are true. Your future remains intact. Your calling remains intact. Your purpose remains intact. And the plans God has for your life remain intact. The enemy attacked your confidence because he feared your potential. He attacked your identity because he feared your destiny. He attacked your peace because he feared your impact. But what he intended for destruction is becoming part of your testimony. And very soon, you will begin seeing evidence that heaven has been working behind the scenes all along. Because the final revelation is not about what happened to your enemies. The final revelation is about what God is preparing for you. And what Michael is about to reveal may become the turning point that changes everything. Chosen one, Archangel Michael says you have spent enough time looking backward. Enough time replaying old wounds. Enough time carrying burdens that were never meant to stay with you. Today, heaven is calling you forward. Not because what happened was acceptable. Not because the pain was imaginary. Not because the betrayal did not matter. But because your future is greater than your past. And the season ahead cannot be entered while carrying the weight of what should have been left behind. Michael says many chosen ones are standing at a spiritual crossroads. One path leads back into old memories, old frustrations, and old questions. The other path leads toward healing, purpose, and divine restoration. The enemy wants you looking backward. God wants you moving forward. Because every moment spent obsessing over what they did is a moment stolen from what God is trying to do. Think about that. The people who hurt you occupied enough of your life already. Do not allow them to occupy your future as well. Michael says something significant is happening in the spiritual realm. The season of hidden preparation is coming to an end. The lessons have been learned. The strength has been built. The wisdom has been gained. And now the time has come for movement. You may not see every detail yet. You may not understand every step. But heaven is already positioning things on your behalf. Opportunities you cannot see. Connections you have not met. Doors that have not opened. Blessings that have not arrived. All of them moving closer with every passing day. The enemy wanted your story to end in disappointment. God is writing a different ending. The enemy wanted your heart to become bitter. God is teaching it to become stronger. The enemy wanted you to lose faith. God is showing you why faith was necessary all along. And one day, you will look back at this season with completely different eyes. You will realize that what felt like punishment was often preparation. What felt like delay as often protection. What felt like loss was often redirection. And what felt like the end was often the beginning. Michael says there are people watching your life right now who expect you to remain broken. They expect you to remain discouraged. They expect you to remain stuck. But they are about to witness something they never expected. Your rise, your healing, your growth, your transformation. Not because you are perfect, not because you never struggled, but because God's purpose is greater than the attacks that came against you. And that purpose is still alive. Right now, Michael wants you to release every burden you have been carrying. Release the anger. Release the resentment. Release the need to understand everything. Release the need to control the outcome. And trust that divine justice operates with perfect wisdom. You do not need to fight every battle. You do not need to prove every point. You do not need to convince every person. Some victories belong to God alone. Some battles are won in ways you cannot yet see. And some answers arrive only after you decide to move forward. Michael says your next chapter will not look like your last chapter. The confusion is ending. The heaviness is lifting. The fear is breaking. The uncertainty is fading. A new season is approaching, and you are stronger than you realize, wiser than you realize, more prepared than you realize, and closer to your breakthrough than you realize. So lift your head, strengthen your spirit, and remember who you are. You are not defined by betrayal. You are not defined by rejection. You are not defined by the opinions of others. You are defined by the purpose God placed within you before this journey even began. And that purpose still stands. No attack canceled it. No disappointment destroyed it. No enemy defeated it. The best part of your story is not behind you. It is ahead of you. Archangel Michael says, "Chosen one, release the past and step into your future. What was meant to break you has strengthened you. What was meant to stop you has prepared you. What was meant to bury you has planted you. Stand firm, trust heaven, and move forward without fear. Your season is changing, your path is opening, and your purpose remains secure." Receive that message today. And if this message spoke to your spirit, type, "I trust God's timing," in the comments below. Also, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs this message, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss the guidance Archangel Michael has for the chosen ones. Stay blessed, stay strong, and remember, heaven has not forgotten you.